What's up, guys? Farah Hanoun here, aka UFC News Alerts, and welcome to the very first episode of the UFC News Alerts Q&A. Thank you to those who submitted questions. I will do my best to get to as many as I can, so let's get to it. First of all, we've got at Northwest_Beaston. Who do you see Khabib Nurmagomedov fighting next? Well, it came out that Khabib spoke to Russian media and said that negotiations are underway for him to fight Conor McGregor. Now, of course, we have no clue what's going to happen with Conor McGregor. He's got the court date on June 14th, so obviously we're going to have to see that. I would assume that Conor McGregor would be Khabib's number one option, despite the fact that he said he would make him beg. So that's quite interesting. But it seems like that's the fight he wants. That's the fight he wants to make happen. We're going to have to see what's going to happen with Conor McGregor. Tony Ferguson, of course, his unfortunate situation, he had to undergo surgery for a torn MCL for tripping on that wire when he was forced to pull out of his fight against Khabib Nurmagomedov at UFC 223. So if Tony Ferguson isn't healthy in time, and Conor McGregor, we don't know what's happening with him, but it seems like Khabib is targeting Conor McGregor first. Who do I see Khabib fighting next? Again, honestly depends on what happens with Conor McGregor, how fast Tony Ferguson heals. I believe it's number one option, Conor McGregor. Number two, Tony Ferguson. Number three, I'd probably say Dustin Poirier. Which takes me to the next question at Kobe Carr. If you were the matchmakers, who would be next for Khabib on who deserves it, not what's best for sales? You know what? I do believe just because Conor McGregor was the champion. I mean, he got stripped, but he was the champion. And yes, you know, Conor is obviously doing Conor and he hasn't defended the belt and all that, but he kind of ticks two boxes. He was the champion. He beat Eddie Alvarez pretty decisively. It was a phenomenal performance by Conor. It was a while ago, but we can't forget that. I mean, he did beat the guy who had the belt. At the time, he beat the current lightweight champion in Eddie Alvarez. So it's not a crazy idea for Conor to be the one to fight Khabib. And it makes all the sense in terms of sales and money and pay-per-view and general interest and matchup. And I feel like it ticks all boxes. But again, if Conor McGregor doesn't get his legal issues sorted out, who do I think deserves? I'd go for Tony Ferguson next. I mean, he was the interim champion. UFC stripped him of the belt. But he's on a 10-fight win streak. He's kind of done everything that he needs to do. He does deserve that fight with Khabib Nurmagomedov. I know the UFC and Dana said they'll never book it again. It's been cursed. It's, been off 1,000 times, been canceled 1,000 times. But it's still a fight I'd love to see. And it would be hard to say that Tony doesn't deserve it. So I guess we're going to have to see. Next question at Trujillo_Jose99. Should Dustin get a title shot? This is kind of all relevant, which is why I'm going through these lightweight division questions. Dustin's solid. He deserves it. He's been active and he's been putting on phenomenal performances. I'm not against Dustin getting the title shot at all. I'm a big fan of Dustin Poirier. But I just do believe with the way things are in the division, I would put Conor McGregor, then Tony Ferguson above him. But like I said, we never know what's going to happen with Conor McGregor and his legal situation. And then you've got Tony Ferguson who's healing from an injury. So the title shot could go to Dustin Poirier. I mean, he definitely should stay ready. I know he wants the title shot. And he mentioned that Khabib's manager, Ali Abdelaziz, said that they're thinking of him and he should get it. But then all of a sudden we hear that Khabib spoke to Russian media and said that the negotiations about the Conor McGregor fight are happening. So I'm not sure exactly what's going on. But I do believe with Tony Ferguson's date of return unknown, with Conor McGregor's legal status, and obviously he's got the court date June 14th, that's unknown. Dustin Poirier is the guy I'd throw in next. Khabib, obviously with Ramadan coming up, he's not going to fight until at least, I'd say maybe September. So timeline-wise, that's good for Poirier and it's good for Khabib. So if I'm Poirier, I'd wait and see what Khabib does next. If Khabib ends up fighting Conor or Tony, then I'd book the Dustin Poirier Eddie Alvarez rematch for sure. I mean, it was a phenomenal fight, ended in a very unfortunate way with the illegal knees and a no contest. I think they should run it back. Both guys have a win over Justin Gaethje. I'd 100% run that back. So if I'm Dustin Poirier, I wait to see what Khabib Nurmagomedov does. Once he's got a fight booked, I'd say do Poirier versus Alvarez. Poirier did say that Alvarez turned him down 5 times, so that's quite interesting. And I know Eddie Alvarez wants the title shot as well. I do believe, just because, I don't know, I just do believe that they'd go with Poirier over Alvarez, I believe, if it weren't to be Tony or Conor. But we'll see. If it's not Poirier, if it's not Alvarez, run it back for sure. Next question comes from Jackie Rick Bowen. Kevin Lee or Barbosa? Well, I don't like giving predictions of who's going to win, just because I like to kind of keep a good rapport with all the fighters. But what I would do is tell you the keys to victory, in my opinion. Of course, we all saw the news this morning that Kevin Lee missed weight. He didn't continue cutting weight, which means physically he probably feels fine. I mean, he always is drained from the weight cut. Last time his fight against Tony Ferguson, it was a staph infection that ultimately affected his cardio. We haven't really seen cardio issues with Kevin Lee in the past. He's always had a tough weight cut, so I don't believe that we're going to see cardio issues from him here. It is interesting because it's a 5-round fight. Of course, Kevin Lee forfeited 20% of his purse to Barbosa. Barbosa accepted right away. You know, he wanted a fight. So it's awesome that we still have the fight. Obviously, I mean, the keys to victory, it's pretty, it's a striker versus grappler fight. Kevin Lee is going to look to push the pressure. He's going to look for the takedown. Close distance, go for the takedown. Obviously, Barbosa's lethal with his kicks. The leg kicks, the body kicks, the head kicks, the striking. Kevin Lee's going to have to close the distance and make sure that he isn't on the receiving end of any of Barbosa's devastating kicks. The leg kicks are going to play a big factor because it's going to be tough for Kevin Lee to go for those takedowns if he's on wobbly legs. Barbosa throws some of the most lethal leg kicks. So definitely close distance, pressure him, stack him against the cage, just grind the fight out. But again, the weight cut, is it going to have an effect on Kevin Lee's cardio? Because we've seen how tough Edson Barbosa is. I mean, he went through 5 rounds with Khabib Nurmagomedov of Khabib just ragdolled him, and he was able to stay in there. So he's a tough guy. He's not going to be put away easily. So this is a 5-round fight. So will Kevin Lee's cardio, again, I believe the staph infection had a massive part to do with why he gassed out against Tony Ferguson. It is a super aggressive pace that Kevin Lee pushes that I believe he's capable of. We don't know anything about his weight cut and how it went, other than the fact, obviously, he missed weight. But we don't know. I mean, they stopped him from cutting weight, which at least he didn't have to drag his body to try to cut that last pound or two quickly. Pound, actually, since he weighed in at 157 pounds. Non-title fight, so he had to weigh in at 156. So yeah, I believe that it's a very winnable fight for both of them. Barbosa, I'm sure, has learned a ton of lessons in his fight with Khabib. Excuse me, I did mention that the Khabib Edson was 5 rounds. It was 3 rounds, my apologies. But still, 3 rounds of Khabib absolutely mauling him and massive ground and pound just on Barbosa, just on him the whole time, and he was tough and he stuck through, and he was coming into the 2nd and 3rd round not looking too bad. I mean, he did get beat up in the rounds, but he looked fresh, so it's interesting. It's an interesting fight. Interesting stylistic fight for sure. Next question comes from Otto Ruila, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. What got me into MMA? My older brother, he got me into MMA. I used to watch it casually, not as a diehard fan. I'd watch kind of random cards. I remember he was showing me UFC 77, and it was around that time with George St. Pierre, Lyoto Machida. I'm not sure what card exactly that was when Machida fought Sokoudjou. That was pretty much the first card I think I watched. So yeah, my older brother got me into it. The first fight where I was like, I want to know who's going to win, and I watched I believe it was prime time at the time, and all the media leading up and all that was Sun and Silva 1. You know, my cousin was showing me everything, and I had to watch the fight. The other fights I was just kind of watching on TV, didn't know the backstory, nothing media related. So, yeah, once I saw the promos and all that, it really hyped me up. And Sun and Silva, especially the way Sun and Silva 1 ended, was pretty insane. Obviously, from there on out, I was just hooked. Like, I wouldn't miss a single UFC and kind of watch all the interviews and then the prime times that ended up being countdowns and all that before the fight. The next question. All right, it's Jackie Rick Bowen again. Asking, should Eddie Alvarez get the next title shot? Should Dustin get another shot at Eddie? Or should Conor storm and take on Khabib? That's pretty much what I answered before. So I believe I covered that. Gunnar Nelson, this is _JMA. Gunnar Nelson versus Neil Magny. Again, it's an interesting fight. I mean, Neil Magny is one of the more underrated welterweights, I believe. He's one of those guys that people don't really give a chance in fights, and he just keeps finding ways to win. You know, he can kind of do a bit of everything. Obviously, his fight, he's coming off of a win over Carlos Condit, which surprised a lot of people. And then the fight before it kind of was a super quick fight against RDA. He landed a leg kick and he slipped, and RDA just made him pay and kind of ended in the first round. Gunnar Nelson's coming off the first round knockout loss to Santiago Ponzinibbio. Yeah, a bit of controversy with the eye pokes and all that, but I still think Gunnar Nelson's a really good fighter. I just feel like he hasn't lived up to his potential yet. He's got a really cool karate style, very effective. He's an underrated striker. His ground game's great. I mean, he went up against Maia and, in my opinion, approached the fight completely incorrectly. He kind of just invited the ground game against Damian Maia. I mean, why would you do that? Especially that Damian Maia's best attribute isn't his striking, and I believe Gunnar Nelson definitely had a striking advantage, but he decided to play on the ground with Damian Maia. I believe maybe he felt like he could do well. So that's a loss that maybe he shouldn't have had if he just came with a different strategy. The Ponzinibbio fight, I mean, credit to Ponzinibbio, he's also a great fighter. So, yeah, the eye pokes, but I don't want to take that win away from Santiago. Magny, yeah, I mean, Magny's tough. We've seen how tough Neil Magny is in the Hector Lombard fight. So, tough, durable, great cardio, long rangey, can strike. Solid grappler. I mean, yes, in the RDA fight, it kind of didn't go his way, but in general, solid grappler. So it's an interesting fight. I believe it depends on the game plan that Gunnar Nelson's going to come out with. I believe Neil is one of those guys that's good at adapting at what his opponent throws at him. So is Gunnar going to come with a heavy grapple approach, or is he going to stand and strike? So I think it'll be interesting to see what strategy Gunnar Nelson comes out with. All right. At Marco Degad, 531. CM Punk versus Mike Jackson, you're picking why? Honestly, I don't have an opinion on that at all. I have no clue what CM Punk is going to look like. Obviously, you know, he fought Mickey Gall, and Mickey Gall was a stern test. I mean, Mickey Gall is a solid fighter. I mean, he's got great jiu-jitsu. Not really the test you should have put CM Punk against. I mean, he was 0-0 as a professional, 0-0 as an amateur, 0-0 as everything. I mean, all his teammates, CM Punk, have been saying that he's showing improvements, but I have no clue what to expect from CM Punk, to be honest. We didn't even get to see a single thing in the Mickey Gall fight, just that he's tough, but no clue, honest to God, how to break that fight down. At Tiff Garibaldi, do you think Karolina Kowalkiewicz get another title shot against Doug Rose? Any idea who will Brock Lesnar fight when he returns? GSP. I'm assuming that's a different question. All right. Do I think Carolina can get another shot at Rose? I mean, obviously it's great that she has that win over Rose, but I do believe that they're gonna go with Jessica Andrade next. That's just what I believe. If they don't for some reason, then I'm sure Rose would love to get that one back from Carolina. I do believe Carolina may need one more win. I believe that Andrade has looked more impressive. Although Andrade did get a crack at the title when she lost to Joanna, but I believe they're gonna go with Jessica Andrade, and maybe Carolina could fight the winner of. Oh no, she already fought Claudia Gadelha. Well, we'll see what happens with Claudia Gadelha and Carlos Esparza, but I believe they'll go for Jessica Andrade. Any idea who Brock Lesnar will fight? I believe they'll probably put Brock Lesnar. I wouldn't be surprised against the winner of DC and Stipe because it is a big money fight. You saw the look on DC's face. It was practically a meme. You saw the look on DC's face. He was so excited at the idea of Brock Lesnar. So if Lesnar is going to come back, it's going to be a big fight. I wouldn't be surprised if they put him against the winner of DC and Stipe or I don't know. I don't know, but it's going to be a big fight in my opinion. George St. Pierre, again, St. Pierre probably won't return unless it's a big fight him as well. I mean, he's got nothing left to prove. Who the big fight is, who he'd want. I mean, Khabib expressed interest. Conor is always going to be interesting to people because that's the definition of a money fight. I mean, George St. Pierre will probably return. If he returns, it will be for the money. And nobody is a bigger money fight than Conor McGregor. Would he do it at lightweight, welterweight? I have no clue. But I don't think George St. Pierre right this second is thinking of coming back. All right. At Francesco Furioso. What do you think about embedded in-depth longer for UFC Fight Pass prelims to promote better up-and-coming stars? I'd love that. I mean, if you're asking me personally, obviously I cover it A to Z. I'd love to see that. Maybe not an embedded because people like embedded so much that it might bother them that the camera is not on their favorite stars. I think they should do a separate feature on the stars that are... or I think at least before they do that, they should maybe do it like this card this weekend. There's barely been any promotion on UFC Atlantic City. I mean, you've got Kevin Lee, Edson Barbosa, Frankie Edgar, and Cub Swanson. These are 4 stars, and other than Media Day, pretty much, there's been zero promo from the UFC. I would have loved to see... I mean, they only do countdowns for pay-per-view, but any sort of feature, just because they're phenomenal fighters and they deserve that. In terms of, the Fight Pass prelims, yeah, they should do a feature rather on the Fight Pass prelims, whether an embedded, like they did that ages ago with when Sage and Paige were fighting on the same card, but they did it because it was Sage and Paige. I guess the whole point is we're talking about doing it on stars that don't get the shine. I believe they should do some sort of show, make it especially for the prelim fighters. Definitely. I mean, the embedded format is always fun. So, yeah, I'd say they should. At Dom313, why is Cain Velasquez removed from the heavyweight rankings? I believe due to inactivity. I don't think it means anything at all. That's just my opinion. At Jake_Buckner20, who do you think is the biggest threat to Cyborg's title reign? I'd like to see Megan Anderson fight her. I know Megan's got Holly Holm next, and should she beat Holly, then book that right away. Megan's actually bigger than Cyborg. I mean, she's long and rangy and taller, so I would have said maybe because Megan hasn't fought since January 2017, so maybe throwing her in a 5-rounder against Cyborg, although I did just speak to Megan and she told me that it wouldn't have mattered at all to her, because I asked her if she would have rather... or if she's seeing it as a positive that she's got Holly as kind of a... I wouldn't call Holly a warm-up fight, but I mean the concept of her fighting one fight before a title shot being a warm-up, kind of any potential ring rust and all that, but she said no, she would have been ready to go, so who knows, but should Megan get through Holly, then definitely book that, because I felt like they should have booked it from before, but obviously there were a lot of issues, personal issues with Megan and all that. At UFC Everything, who should fight Rose next, Carolina or Andrade? I'd go with Jessica Andrade. Where should we go next? At Macedon48, as a journalist, what's some of your aspirations / goals you want to accomplish in your career that you want to be known for? Just stay on this road, really. Try to interview as many fighters as possible. I try my best to reach out to all the fighters I possibly can. Those who are up for it, great. If they're not, they're not. But yeah, I'd love just to stay reporting news, just giving kind of a platform not only for the bigger names, but the smaller names that don't get attention. But the key is to get the bigger names so I become a bigger name so that when I interview the smaller names, they actually get some shine, if that makes any sense. What I do like is on my page, of course, at UFC News Alerts, I post about every single fighter on the UFC roster, which is nice because, yes, you'll get the occasional who the F is that guy kind of comments under some of the posts, but at the end of the day, you're reading the name, you're looking at the picture. They all deserve that exposure because I feel like a lot of media outlets, just because they've got so much to do, maybe, don't pay attention to the lesser known fighters. So what I like is if I get the chance to speak to them, they get to tell their story. I have a solid platform on UFC News Alerts. I mean, you guys have been amazing. I've got a nice nice following on UFC News Alerts, which kind of puts that exposure on those fighters. So the better interviews I get, the more I grow, which would shed more spotlight on the fighters that don't. So this is kind of why I do it and why I enjoy doing it, just to shed spotlight on somebody who's got a story. And then, because once upon a time, everybody was kind of an unknown fighter that has a great story that nobody knows about. You say that story, they win their next couple of fights by knockout, and they become a star, and everybody knows about them. So it's nice to be a part of their journey, if that makes any sense. Is Luke Rockhold's career over? He's been losing a lot. Definitely over his prime, I think. No, I wouldn't say Luke Rockhold his career is over. He's had some big fights, he's had some tough fights, but I do believe, he's got striking defense has got to tighten up for sure. I mean, he kind of leaves his hand low and he's paid for it. I thought he did solid against Romero. I mean, what do you do against Yoel Romero? You try to be more active than him with the strikes. Avoid his power. You're probably not going to finish him. You're probably not going to take him down, although I believe Rockhold's one of the better grapplers in the whole UFC. I think Rockhold's a very, very good grappler. But I don't think he would have taken the Olympic wrestler in Romero down. So what you do is you get in his face, throw more strikes than he does, avoid his big strikes, get him tired, just be more active. Kind of what Robert Whittaker did. And I thought he was doing solid, but he got caught. Romero's explosive. It's what he does. You saw that against Chris Weidman as well. He's a super explosive dude. So, no, I don't think his career is done, but Rocco keeps going for the super tough fights. I mean, I do believe it's been a super big weight cut for him. You could tell from his face and his body how drained he looks when he cuts down to 85. He said that he's done with that. He's looking at light heavyweight. He's looking at Alexander Gustafsson. I know he wants the big fights. I respect him for that, but I believe because for him, if he jumps up to light heavyweight and takes on a relatively unknown name and loses, that's going to be a super tough spot in his career. But when you lose to the best, it's a little different because there's big risk, obviously, when you fight the best, but even bigger reward. Because you beat Gustafsson, they can already talk about you fighting for a title. So I see what Rockhold's doing, but I believe he's just got to tighten his defense striking-wise. And I believe we could see, if he were to fight Gustafsson, it'll be interesting to see him when he tries to take it to the ground. how Gustafsson will react to it. So that'll be interesting. At Dennis Kavar, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, do you think Mirsad Bektik is a future champ? Mirsad's a phenomenal fighter, very good fighter. Obviously, he had that setback against Darren Elkins with that crazy comeback, but he was dominating that fight. He's a great fighter, and I think Ricardo Lamas is a great test for him. You know, Lamas is a veteran. He did get caught in his last fight. Unfortunate for him, but I still think Lamas is a very, very good fighter, very well-rounded. Striking, grappling, jiu-jitsu, I think he's kind of, wherever the fight goes, Lamas can do well. And I love the fight. I believe it's kind of one of those fights where Lamas is going to try to prove, you know what, this is the top 5. You know, this is a different level. And Bektik is going to try to prove that I am that level. And it would definitely skyrocket him into, maybe not contention, but very close to it because he's a fresh face. A fresh face is always good for a division. Especially that he hasn't even fought any of these big names yet. Lamas would be his first tough test. So I like Mirsad a lot. He moved to TriStar. Used to be American Top Team. Not quite sure why he did that, but it'll be interesting to see strategy-wise what he's going to look like against Ricardo Lamas. Why does Mighty Mouse not receive the recognition for his achievement in the sport? I mean, of course, he's a phenomenal fighter, phenomenal champion, defended his belt, holds a record, super well-rounded, can kind of do it all. I believe when you're at that level that people are going to hate. But with him, unfortunately, I just feel like the lighter divisions just don't get the respect that they deserve. You know, people are undermining the division itself. They're saying, you know, he hasn't beaten anybody. Although, you know, Mighty Mouse is one of those guys that he beat a good Joseph Benavidez, and then he beat a very good Joseph Benavidez in the rematch. It's not easy to do those kind of things. And then it's rumored that he's going to fight Cejudo for the second time, but he beat Henry Cejudo in the first round. His 2 toughest challenges, which were supposed to be Joseph Benavidez and Henry Cejudo, he knocked out both in the first round. That's crazy. I mean, look at Joseph Benavidez in all his other fights. It's pretty insane. But, you know what? People are just going to undermine. Then he had that crazy armbar, that like submission of the year armbar. He's finishing fights as well. And he did face some adversity against Tim Elliott. And he got some criticism for that. But you know what? That's what makes a champion. The way he just calmly adjusted. He was having a little bit of trouble in the stand-up, and then just Elliott, who's a phenomenal grappler himself, and he just took him down and controlled him. You gotta, as a champion, you gotta be able to face adversity in a fight and adjust, and that's what he did. So I think Demetrius fantastic. Why does he not get the credit? I don't know. Maybe he's not as brash as people want him to be. I just believe the smaller weight classes do not get the respect they deserve. Is Khabib versus Tony going to happen or not? Again, it depends if Khabib... With Dana saying that they will never book it, I don't entirely believe that. I just believe it depends on what Khabib wants and how long it's going to take Tony to recover. Who do I have in the TJ Cody rematch? Well, somebody asked, is it happening? I'm sure by now you know that it's happening. I love the rematch. I feel like I'm one of the few people that loves that Cody-TJ rematch. I get it, of course. Before I get some heat, I get it. Cody might not necessarily deserve the rematch. I get that. But as a matchup, it's a phenomenal fight. They are so evenly matched. You saw, like, the first fight. How could you not want to see a rematch after the first fight went? Cody drops him. TJ potentially saved by the bell. And then TJ finishes him in the second round. It's such a great fight. I mean, they're both phenomenal strikers. I believe TJ's probably more diverse in his striking attack. Both phenomenal wrestlers. I don't believe anybody can really keep the other one down. Cody's got the power, the one-punch power. It's such a good fight. I'm so curious to see how it's going to go down the second one. I believe it can go either way. Like, they're so evenly matched. I feel like on paper it's one of the best fights you can get, period. So yeah, I didn't give a prediction because, like I said before, I'm not going to give a prediction, but I'd like to see Cody mix it up a little bit. That's what I'd say in terms of his approach. Try some takedowns. I believe he could take TJ down. Can he keep him down? Maybe not. But mix that in. He should try to mix that in. Any news on UFC Boise? Well, I just posted, I know you asked this 2 days ago, but I just posted 3 fights, Kat Zingano and Marion Renault at 135. There were little rumblings that Zingano might move up to 45, but I guess she's staying. Renault's on a 2-fight win streak. I believe if she beats Zingano, again, the whole looking for a fresh face, they could really use her at 135 pounds. Marion Renault, she looked great in her last fight. So it'll be interesting if she gets through. Zingano's on a 3-fight losing streak, so it's a super tough spot for her. Winning this fight will show that, she can still hang with these girls. Of course, she holds the win over current champion Amanda Nunes. So a lot of pressure on Zingano, and this is a fight for Renault where she could really, she lost the big fight against Holly Holm before, so this fight is an important one for her. And also we got Justin Scoggins and Said Nurmagomedov. That fight will be at flyweight. And one more fight, we've got Liz Carmouche and Jennifer Maia. That is going to be at flyweight. So good to see them trying to build that flyweight division for sure. Who do you see next for Justin Gaethje? Of course, 2 tough losses for Gaethje. I'd like to see him against Al Iaquinta. I'd do Gaethje Al Iaquinta. I think Iaquinta, obviously stepping in on short notice, got tons of respect. A lot more people know him now. I've always been a fan of Al. I always thought he was a great fighter. And at this point, with Al saving the day like that, I think he deserves a big fight. Put him against Justin Gaethje. That's a fight 100% everybody would love to see. Both can wrestle. Both can strike. Alright, I'm going to go for 2 more questions so I don't make this too long. At Jacob Ventura, if Thompson loses on May 27th versus Till, do you think he'll ever get a belt? It's going to be a tough setback just because there's so much attention on Darren Till and it's kind of starting to annoy Stephen Thompson. So I think mentally it's going to be a tough one to recover from, especially if he loses by knockout, just because he felt a little bit disrespected by the UFC saying, fight this guy, who, a very talented Darren Till, but hasn't really done much other than beat Cowboy. Cowboy's phenomenal, but Cowboy isn't on his best run. And do it in Liverpool as well. I mean, he's a number 1 ranked guy. Thompson wanted a top ranked guy. Doesn't get number 2, doesn't get number 3, or 4, or 5, or 6 for that matter. He gets number 7, Darren Till, who the UFC are hyping up a lot and making him fight him in Liverpool. So I believe the loss shouldn't mean much, but I believe it would maybe have an effect more mentally than just losing a fight. But Stephen Thompson's a great fighter. I still believe he's one of the best. The way he lost to Tyron, the way he looked against Jorge Masvidal, who I'm a big fan of and I think is a great fighter. I mean, Masvidal is super well-rounded, and Thompson had a pretty dominant performance against Masvidal, so I think it'll depend on Stephen Thompson himself and how he mentally would take the loss should he lose. I wouldn't rule him out for a future title shot. One last thing, the unknown experts. Any advice you have for an up-and-coming podcast? I haven't really started my podcast yet. I'm still doing these little clips and things, but get some solid equipment, get a good mic. I'd say that's the number 1 thing. And just stay on top of news. I mean, do fight recap. People love to see fight predictions. I mean, I get asked that a lot, as you can see. Do a fight breakdown prediction before every Saturday's card, I'd say. If you want to start out like that, I think you should kind of break down, for example, you've got this weekend, so kind of break down Barbosa, Lee, break down Edgar Swanson, do a prediction, break down all that, give your opinion. I don't know if you're hosting a podcast with somebody else or just on your own, but if you can do it with somebody else, it's nice to talk to somebody else and make it conversational. I say start out with that. If you can get UFC fighter interviews, that's also great. You can embed that onto your show, but I'd say the best way to start is kind of do a card breakdown or kind of a feature on somebody like Dustin Poirier, who emerged victorious. Maybe do a feature on him. Who should Dustin Poirier fight next? And kind of do a feature on him. Keep it relevant. I mean, if you want to grow and build, keep it relevant to what's happening now, as opposed to talk about something random like who's next at flyweight or something like that. Like, talk about what's happening right now, which, for example, the lightweight division is as hot as it's ever been. So maybe, talk about everything that's happening right now and gauge people's interest, and then slowly from there you'll build and see what people react to, and eventually you'll start building and you'll grow from there. All right, that will do it. Thank you very much for all those who submitted questions. I apologize if I didn't get to yours. I just felt some of them were a little bit repetitive, so I felt like I covered them in other questions. But thank you so much. I will look to do this once a week at least, where I'll post and have you guys ask some questions. I really appreciate it. This is a bit long, closing in on 40 minutes. I'll try to be a lot faster the next time, maybe, so you could actually want to listen to it. But thank you so much for all those who submitted questions, and see you guys next week.